Okay. Well, okay. Hey, we are live. Mercedes Carrera, and my webcam's off because I'm having network problems. And so I'm just going to turn the floor over to you, and you can introduce yourself. And we're here to talk about veterans issues, and so we'll go from there.
Okay. I can't really see anybody. So a little bit about me and who I am. I've been on Twitter since it all began, quite a long time ago. Ever since then, I've always publicized my status as being in the Army. First, it was active up until about a year ago. Oh, sorry, 2013. It's been too long. And then I got out, and now I'm a reservist. So what I do is irrelevant, but it's a fun job. It's unique. It's availed me to a large portion of the Army and the military as a whole. I've worked joint operations in Afghanistan twice now, and did one tour in Iraq. And then I have the almost mandatory stint to Korea. I enjoy scotch and good whiskey, and started following Mercedes because of either Gamergate or something along the lines of she was ranting about politicians, and I tended to like that. So it was fun to listen to and read. And the other day, the reason why we kind of started talking here, her observations really drove me to pay attention. And I, as a soldier I've been in the Army now 14 years, a total 13 active, and now this one reserve time. You feel alone after a while about whether or not civilians really do give a shit about what you do, or B, give a damn about what happens when you come back, and the problems you either have to deal with or your friends deal with. That's usually the case. Yeah, there are tons and tons and tons of organizations out there that, well, they support you. They certainly have these goals in mind of getting you hired and training you, but then they don't take into account some of the particulars of people's time. I mean, a large part of the military is older. We're not all certainly 18 to 19-year-old kids running off to join be drafted into the infantry and play bang bang shoot 'em up. In fact, 7 out of statistics usually runs 1 out of 7 is usually only an infantryman, meaning ubiquitous combat arms. The rest of those are those combat support, service support staff who enable the warfighter to do what he does best, and that's what we're here for. That's what I enjoy doing. My main job is to point the finger, make sure it's accurate enough, and hopefully the bad guy doesn't win out today. Roughly, that's what I do. I enjoy talking to people, and so I am talking to you fine folks. I can't see any chat, by the way, so I don't know if I can't even read if anybody's got questions or anything.
I can see it, so I'll relay them to you. Yeah, and I think that this is. I'm so glad. Thank you first and foremost. Thank you for taking the time to come talk to me today, because it's something that, as a civilian, and I think it's hidden from civilians. So because it's not in front of us, and because it seems like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I'm not paying attention well enough, but it seems like politicians don't really like to talk about it. About what career military, what happens when people come back, PTSD, things like that. So it's an easy issue for people to not pay attention to. And I know we were talking about Gamergate, mm-hmm. and part of my personal path into this was what we noticed in Gamergate. Gamergate inadvertently became aligned with a lot of the MRAs and a lot of the the men's rights activists, and also just really calling out the hypocrisy of feminism. What I've noticed lately in the news is there's just this proliferation of, like, we're going to talk about imagined women's issues. Like, they've debunked a lot of the wage gap stuff, but we're going to talk about that. But then, looking into this, and just what I've learned in the last day and a half, it is so prolific. It's kind of like you're talking right now about the age range of soldiers. Like, mm-hmm. A lot of us don't know that because nobody's saying anything about it.
To kind of hit on the few wickets there, I referred you to a friend of mine. He wrote the book Last Brother Home. He in the TEDx talk, and I saw you talking to him earlier today about it. He pointed out to some of these statistics, and even the DoD or VA came out with a report a couple of weeks ago about focusing on military suicides, but you can span that to the entire issue of veteran assistance and support of post-military employment. Um, we're older. We're certainly not younger. We are, um, like most statistics, we are largely we have a higher unemployment rate than the average than the non-military, non-veteran population. And you mentioned it earlier about certification. You had your friend on you. I believe it was just now. Lindsay, Lauren, I can't, Shannon. She had a friend who was a medic, and he had to come back get recertified, and that happens a lot. There are very few military skills that directly translate over into the civilian population. And now, while that's changing, and while a lot of civilian employers and organizations are making it viable to where service equates to some kind of certification or at least acceptance in a broader industry in the industry at large, it's that's still a ways off, and it still doesn't encompass the whole issue. You can't take a 33-year-old man who's been in the service for say 10 years. Let's say 10 years when I was roughly about 33 or so, or a little older. My math was horrible. So you can't take a mid-career individual who has a family, who has bills, maybe a car note or two. Usually at this point now it's a bike, usually a Harley or a crotch rocket. You can't take that guy and say, hey, great, we're going to retrain you. We're going to move you to New York City. We're only going to pay you beginner salary.
Right.
We're going to take you who've led combat missions, who've managed hundreds of people on a staff, who've briefed generals, who've instructed, the next generation of soldiers and leaders. We're going to take you and make you the chogi boy, the coffee catcher for this office. For a lot of people, especially those who don't have a degree, and that's a good bit of the military still, even the enlisted ranks, that's kind of it hurts. It hurts. You take guys who used to be in charge of stuff and say, hey, you know what? Congratulations. All that crap you just did is wonderful, but doesn't amount to a hill of beans here on Wall Street or corporate office A, or even like construction crews. I mean, and granted, some of that let me back up. A lot of that I understand. You do have to mark your time. You do have to do all that, and it is essential. But when I did a case in point, I was doing a job interview for completely unrelated to the defense industry, the intel community, the security community, completely unrelated, with a Fortune 500 company. And I was applying to be effectively a Uber middleman, as I want to call it. He wasn't even I wasn't even a program manager. It was more like a facilitator. And I asked a question. I said, so how fast can I get promoted? How fast can I get, be in charge of a team to take over stuff? Because that's what I do. I don't like to sit on my laurels, and I hate being bored. They looked at me, stern face, and said, well, we're rather slow in our promotion rates here. We don't like to rush things. We want to make sure you understand stuff. And I looked at them and I said, and I was very blunt. At this point, I realized I'm just going to tank the interview. I already had a job lined up, so this was just me trying to do what I can and maybe find another opportunity. And I said, you know what? I've led men in combat situations. I've run patrols. I've had to make decisions under duress and stress, and I've had to do all these things which you will never have to do. Now, I'm not asking for your pity or even your understanding, but except for the fact I do want you to understand is that I've done more as far as management and program management and project management in 1 year than anyone in this team has done in their entire careers.
Right.
And they looked at me and they said, well, that's great, but we still like to promote slowly here because for what reason I don't even remember. It's irrelevant at this point. I didn't take the job, obviously, but I was looking at him and I go, this is what not corporate. This is what post-military career veterans have to look at. And that can span back for decades, going back to World War II, Vietnam, Korea, even Desert Storm, even post-Cold War, even when we drew down the Army. all these veterans who had jobs, who had leadership experience and management experience were being told it didn't matter. I don't care. Your experience wasn't enough. We need you to retrain, but we're also going to start you at bottom salary, entry level salary, and it may be a couple of years before you're back on top, or even even third tier in this whole ring of command and its structure. It's disheartening from a job hunting perspective. Even now, I still look for jobs that kind of give me job satisfaction, but I realize I'm going to start at the bottom.
Right. And that's, that's something that I didn't work with a lot of military personnel, but I worked in aerospace for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always done civilian work. So I worked for an aerospace corporation. I did systems engineering tests. So we worked with a lot of guys who were Air Force. There were some Navy guys that worked over in radar systems. I didn't really interact with them. And they were mostly career, I guess, officers, engineer, that type of support. And one of them, now that you're saying this, it reminds me of a conversation I had with one of them, because he said he wouldn't leave the military because he didn't want to have to come back out. Now, at that time, I mean, everyone thinks being an engineer is such a great job, but not really. I mean, I got in at a bad time in the early 2000s. They were laying a lot of people off. They were, you're civilian, you're looking for work. And so the market was challenging enough as it was. But, for most of us, I mean, had we really earned our stripes? Yeah, you know what? I mean, the guys who had 10, 15 years worth of experience, they're going to get priority.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine what it's like to come out as a 35-year-old who's not only seen combat, but is also, really already done this. Like you guys you already did, and more efficiently, I might add, because that was the other thing is that, I don't think people realize, having worked in civilian, but having had exposure to military, we were really pretty slow compared to the way the military organizational efforts work, because you're dealing with civilians who have all their egos and agendas, and it's corporate and it's bureaucracy and that. So we were not necessarily used to the idea of hey, let's get this going in a week.
Right.
And I think there needs to be this is a conversation that these companies need to have.
You're right about that, and a lot of us, especially some of the younger soldiers who have gotten out early on in my career, I watched them get out and I go, man, what do that's awesome. What are you about to go do? And I didn't have a clue. Well, fast forward to 2.5 years ago, people are asking me, what are you going to do? And I go, I don't have a clue. It's scary when you're looking, you're looking at, your family, your not just your immediate family, the one you created, but your parents, and you go, I'm about to get out. I don't want to have to call mom and dad and be like, hey, can you hold me and my brood up for a couple of weeks while I go find a job down at the taco hut? No, that wasn't going to happen. So I fought like hell to get my job. I got lucky and got the one that I got. But it's scary, and I tell people now, and to kind of come back to the whole veteran assistance issues, and I tell them, don't run away from the Army and military as a whole. Don't run away from it. Yeah, believe me. And like you were saying, there's a lot of politics in the military. It's uncanny and unreal how you watch office politics develop, and it's so stupid, and I fucking hate it. Because it destroys a unit. It absolutely just rips a unit apart. But that's another issue for another drunken day. So don't run away from it. And you can say this for any career, but especially for the military, don't run away from it. Yeah, there are days that it sucks. Yeah, deployments are shitty. Getting shot at sucks. Going through stupid escalation of force rules and rules of engagement and trying to plan stuff and a plan around every possible contingency for an operation just sucks. Having to do that 365 days a year really sucks. But don't run away from that. It's beautiful when you look at it. It's organized. You have a purpose. You are driven. You have a chance to succeed. You have a chance to be promoted. You're paid for your worth. Don't run away from that into nothing. And I say that, and I even said it to say, don't run away from the military just to run into college, because college is what? College is 6 years of 6 years. I was on the 14-year plan. Don't run away into college to go get high, smoke dope, get drunk, get laid, and not learn anything. Have a plan when you get into college. So the bottom line is, don't run away from the military, but run towards something. have an objective and have a goal, have a job you're already running towards, have a degree plan that you know, have a degree at college you know, one, you can obtain in a shortest amount of time, and two, that gets you something that satisfies you. People always complain about the military, and yesterday you were talking to the first guy you did the stream with. I've kind of forgotten his name. He was typical of a lot of guys who came in not really knowing what to expect, and that's fine. Believe me, not everybody comes in, like me, rip roaring Captain America type. Just kidding. I'm definitely not Captain America. But I felt like I owed some time, and it just kind of stuck with me. So he came in not knowing what to do, and that's fine. No one really knows. In fact, the best career advice I ever got was from a warrant officer friend of mine. He said, "Live it one enlistment at a time. Never decide to stay in 20 years when you're only in your second year in service. But don't ever say you're going to get out because you don't want to do another tour. You never know what's going to happen." And it's been to my benefit. But so live it one enlistment at a time. But he didn't. Your friend, the guy the first time yesterday, he didn't have a plan to get out, and that hurt him. And I'm not saying that's his fault. The Army has certainly tried, the military as a whole tries with its posts or with its exit programs. The Army calls it ACAP, which stands for Army Career Alumni Program, and they have all these different tools and all these different assistance programs across the military that are geared towards writing a resume, refining your skills, teaching you how to do a job interview, and getting you lined up for job fairs. There's not a job placement program for post-military veterans. It just doesn't exist, and it's not going to exist. I don't think it should. That's kind of like telling you, hey, you're going to hire that guy over there at $15 an hour. Well, I got hired on at a rate that is substantially lower than the average income for Fairfax County, Virginia, but definitely higher than what I made as a sergeant in the Army. But I'm not happy about it because it's boring most of the times, but it's real fun when I get to go do my job. But a lot of times it's boring. It goes back to that job satisfaction thing. And the reason why I'm hitting on that is because it all boils down to how you feel about yourself as a veteran. You get pumped up with these ideas, and a lot of it you put on yourself about what your job is going to be like, how important you're going to be, what you're going to do. And then you don't get to do it, or you do it. And things happen. Things don't go your way. And life begins to suck, and you enter a very, very dark place. For me, that happened after I got back from Korea. The story is known to a lot of guys. Her name's Shannon, right? The one you just did the last stream with? Yeah. She was talking about the Dependas, and I sent you a link on there. It's pretty funny, cartoon type Facebook page. The Dependopotamus. Well, it's called Jody. Jody comes and he gets your girl and takes her away from you, screws up your whole life, and it really sucks. So, in that swings both ways. Joes in the Army will go and they'll fuck around on their girlfriends or their wives, get somebody else pregnant, and it's just a bad day. It is a bad day when that happens. So I came home looking at separation, eventual divorce. I ended a very dark place. I was all alone. In my next duty station, all by myself. Ate horrible fast food, 3 meals a day. Jack in the Box became my best friend. Jack in the Box in the bottom of a bottle of Jack Daniels. And like my friend who wrote the book Last Brother Home, you enter that dark place not intending on committing suicide, but the thought is there. The depression is certainly there. And it's not until you realize that how close you really came to doing something extremely stupid. I realized how selfish I was. I had a kinky thing about my apartment is I had a 70s style glass mirror. I had a mirror on the wall. The whole wall was a mirror. And that was my room. I was surrounded by a bunch of boxes. I had a mirror. I looked at myself and I said, I am doing something entirely stupid. Thinking about this. I don't want to think about this. So the first thing I did is I Got up, left the my apartment, got in my car. I wasn't drunk yet. Drove down, parked it, went to a tattoo shop, and got my kid's name tattooed on my body. As a reminder, I said if I'm ever naked in a mirror with, or standing in a mirror and I can see myself again, and I'm looking at this and I go, I know I have something to remind myself of why I need to live. And that's the God's honest truth. That's the first reason why I ever got tattoos. Second reason is because they're cool and I like the pain of the needle. So the that's why I got the first piece of tattoo. And that's when I realized suicide's a selfish act. And there was a general who got in trouble for saying that a while ago. But honestly, it's true. He was being very honest, and that's a true statement. If you're thinking about suicide, and if you ever thought about it, you look back on yourself and you go, I'm only thinking about my pain and the pain that I'm going to cause somebody else. And then you look at why you're thinking about it, and you do the backward steps of how you got there. Depression, alcohol. Well, something caused that. There was a trigger. For me, it was not being satisfied with family life. Things turned to shit. For some, it's getting out of the Army, not having anything to fulfill that void of purpose. And that happened to a friend of mine. Not twice, actually. Not one was not too long ago. I mentioned it yesterday to you in DM, and give me a second so I can kind of compose my thoughts on this one.
No, of course.
If anyone's got if they got questions or snide comments, please feel free. I'll be glad to address them by their names and call them out.
Nothing snide yet. Just, we got a question on Jade Helm, so you can.
Sure.
You can,
Really?
Yeah.
I'll be involved in that in a few weeks.
Oh, there you go. So
yeah. I mean, you want to open it up for discussion. I mean, we can talk about a lot of stuff. Jade Helm, Berkdahl. What else you want to talk about? Snowden. I'm not a fan of Snowden or Manning. We can go on for days. But so my friend, we'll just call him Alan for the sake of the story. So I knew Alan. I've known Alan for a while, for at least the last 4 years. 2.5 years ago, when I was still in the Army, Alan attempted suicide on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving morning, he had waited. I was effectively the only friend he had in the unit. And it happens. You have a guy who kind of ends up being singled out, and it really sucks to be that guy. But it's his fault. It's the unit's fault. So when you see that, you try not to be that guy to let it happen. You try to befriend him, and I tried. I thought I succeeded, at least in letting him know, hey, I'm here if you need to talk to me. I understood his problems. He was being kicked out of the Army for medical issues. He had mental issues, really. Not that he was a psychopath, but because he couldn't take it anymore. The stress, the burden became too much to where he was inhibited from doing his job. Actually, he had a profile that said he could not, which is something that limits you from doing your duties. He couldn't be allowed to be around firearms, which means you can't be in the Army. You can't be in the military, period. You got to go. But that was well after he was being chaptered out. So Alan had all this. It's building up. If you can understand how stressful this is to a guy who has done at least 2 tours. I'm sorry, he did 2 tours. Both to Afghanistan. In the second tour, he lost a commander of his. He wasn't there. He has severe survivor's guilt, which, if you understand it as, the best way to understand survivor's guilt is, I wish it could have happened to me. I wish I had died instead of my friend or my commander or somebody who I cared for. So he had severe survivor's guilt, and it hit him real hard. Every day he struggled with it, to the point where he was put on meds, and the meds didn't help. What helped him was counseling with a doc who understood his struggle of dealing with the survivor's guilt. So point number 1 is, don't turn to drugs, don't turn to whiskey, don't turn to bourbon, as much as I like it. But hey, it's a good drink to have when you're able to control it. Don't let it be your answer. don't let the psycho drugs that the docs give you also be your answer, because they're not going to be. They numb the pain. That's all they really are. It's just another drug. They numb the pain, and they don't let you think clearly. The counseling helped, but for whatever reason, he stopped taking the drugs. He didn't have an effective doctor anymore. He didn't have a good counselor. They changed doctors out on him, and he waited until I went on leave. I know he did. He even told me as much. And then he tried to kill himself drinking 2 whole fifths of vodka and downing every pill he had in his cabinet.
Oh, shit.
They found him because the door was open to his dorm room or his barracks room. So when somebody came around doing a security check, you check the locks on the doors, make sure people were there, and it helps prevent theft and rape, sexual assault, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You still get your shit bags in. Let's not be naive. They found him laying there, and I get the second call after the hospital, and they're like, "Hey, your boy's OD'd. He's trying to kill himself." And I wake up. I'm in Central Time Zone. It's Thanksgiving morning, and my first words out of my mouth were, "Holy fuck! What the hell do I do?" I knew somebody living in the barracks. I call him up, tell him, "Hey, you got to get to the hospital. You got to hold him up. You got to make sure he gets through the day and the night." And he stayed with him. He stayed with him for the next 36 hours. For the next 12 hours, though, Alan is fighting with the security guards that are watching him in the ER. He's getting into fistfights with people because he wants to die that bad. He feels that much pain. He feels that much neglect. He's so angry at them because they won't let him go take a smoke, because they don't want him to leave the building and go kill himself. That went on for about 12 hours. So
You cut out. I'm sorry to say.
Oh.
You cut out. Yeah, he said that they didn't want him to go take a smoke because
they didn't want him to go take a smoke because they were afraid he was going to kill himself.
Yeah.
A very real possibility. So that goes on for 12 hours. The whole time I'm awake, not knowing what's going on, and finally I get a phone call that says, "Hey, he's going to be okay. Just be by your phone in case things go bad." But they got him on watch on the floor they had a floor specifically for mental issues. They put him on watch on the floor, and they even called back the old doc who was leaving soon. And they started counseling him right then and there and talking about his issues. "Hey, why did you want to kill yourself?" And he's like, "The pain was too much." And he told me the doc said, "That's your pain, but what about everybody else?" And he kept looking back and he goes, "I got nobody." And then he thought about it. He tells me, he says, "Well, I got one guy, and I'm glad it was me." But I would go back to him and I say, "No, you got a whole shit ton of people. People may fuck around with you your entire lives. They may make fun of you. It happens. It's not bullying. Oh, it is bullying, but it's not meant to be harmful. It's ribbing, Yeah. You don't take it so much to where you want to off yourself. Because the moment you do that, we're all going to hate you because of the pain that we now feel. And that's what happens with suicides." And I told him, I said, "You still got a kid. You still got brothers. You still got a family that loves you. You still got a girlfriend that loves you. You've got all that. All those people are going to suffer if you kill yourself." And he kind of understood that. And that conversation happened when I got back from vacation. But fast forward to a couple months ago, actually, sitting here playing Call of Duty, drinking, bored out of my mind, playing Call of Duty, which normally happens. He posts something on Facebook. "Tonight's the night. I'm tired of it. He's going to end it. He was going to commit suicide by a cop. That was his goal." He got into a fight with his brother. He got into a fight with his sister, he got into a fight with his sister-in-law over her husband. He was homeless at that point. They kicked him out of the house.
Shit.
They kicked him out. He was having a hard time up to that point anyway. He did exactly what the guy yesterday did. He found drugs as a solution because he didn't know if he had anybody else. And I blame myself because I didn't keep up in touch with him as much as I wanted to. And it's hard to. You say it's hard mainly because it is. People move. Sometimes they don't want to talk to you, and that's the hard part. But he found drugs as a solution, and I didn't help him out. Um, uh, Weed seemed to be a better alternative than the pills they were shoving down his throat when he was on duty. But the VA kind of helped out with that. Um, Thankfully, and I've never really been a big proponent of weed until recent. Not, I wouldn't say proponent, but I've always been. I was born a cop's son, so I had a very jaded view of weed. And that's kind of changed over the last couple of years. But then, like, I began to realize that, like, the VA has become more accommodating to medical marijuana, and so that's good. I think, especially if it's going to help you out, help you move away from the psycho drugs that dull your mind. So back to a few months ago, Alan is trying to figure out what he's going to do to kill himself. I reach out to him on the phone and I go, "Hey, what the fuck are you doing, dude?" And he tells me the whole story. They kicked him out. He's homeless. He's living in his truck right now. He's got a gun. He's going to pick a fight and he's just going to hold out until someone shoots him. And I go, "You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be out of your goddamn mind. I'm going to hate you and I will haunt you. I will find you in the afterlife and I will come find you and haunt you if you do this shit." He's like, "Well, I don't know what else to do." And he's like, "I got no job. I'm not satisfied with my life. I'm ready to end it." And I go, "Well, you've got me. I care. I give a shit. Your sister gives a shit. I know her husband may not, but she does. You still got a kid that you love, right?" And he's like, "Well, my mom, her mom won't let me talk to her." And I was like, "Well, find a way. Get your ass down to where she lives at and go be a dad. You got to surround yourself with things that are actually going to do you some good instead of things that are going to kill you." And so we had that conversation, and I didn't know what to do. I was calling friends that work for I'm trying to think. They work for Team Rubicon. I had friends on another gun forum. They live in the state he lived in. I was like, "Hey, I need you to contact police. I need you to contact anyone you can. Tell them what's going down. To do this, find this guy." So I ended up calling a VA crisis line. I called a suicide hotline myself. I was like, "Hey, this is what's happening." So just like your friend yesterday, the guy yesterday, that crisis hotline was a lifesaver. I truly do believe, because through her, we ended up contacting the local police, and they put out an APB on his truck. They found his truck. They found him. They found the gun. They talked him out of everything. Fast forward to now, you look at his Facebook page, and I'm glad he's still on there. He's got a girl. They're taking care of this little girl, this little baby. He seems to be genuinely happy. So suicide, and if you've lost someone over suicide, I'm sorry, but it's a selfish act by that person. So don't beat yourself up over it. There is nothing you can do to stop someone from killing themselves. There was a sergeant in Afghanistan, my last tour in 2012. He gets on the ground. He spends 2 weeks on our base. I get to know him pretty well over those 2 weeks. You make fast friends in the military. And he shoots out the door to go with he is a team leader. You got to understand this. He is a team leader in charge of this team in this remote outpost in Afghanistan. First week there, he kills himself.
Oh, shit.
Doesn't even make it a week in really a month into being in country. Kills himself in front of his team. And that ruined that team. Obviously, that team had to get pulled. They all got separated. There's a way out of it. There's a way out of the depression. And for veterans, there's a way out. There are people out there to help you, and that's why I got a little irate yesterday when someone said on Twitter, "Hey, they leave you alone to kick you out." I was like, no, they don't. They really don't. There are people willing to help you. You, as the person suffering, or you as someone who knows someone is suffering, you have to be able to reach out for them or to these people and ask for it. And part of that goes back to like what you're talking about, how it's kind of largely hidden away from the public eye, mainly because it's embarrassing to talk about suicide. Look at my friend who wrote the book, Last Brother Down, Don Lee Gonke. Good.
Mm-hmm.
He stood up in front of his peers in person at a college in the Midwest and spoke to them about his attempt at suicide. That took a lot of goddamn courage to do that, for one man to do that. It's hard to talk about suicide, especially if you were actually about to do it. It's hard to talk about suicide on a national level because these issues, like Villain in Glasses was talking here, he talked about divorce in his platoon. You divorce, suicide, all those issues stem from, and financial issues, we go back to that, financial issues, all those issues come back to something deeper, something that is deeper than the cause and the trigger itself that says, I need to kill myself, I need to get a divorce. There's a deeper issue. Happy story ending time. The woman that I divorced, I ended up remarrying again. We have a whole brand new family, and it's an awesome life. Like I always like to say, there's a way forward through things. You just have to think. You have to stop and think around it. And your pain is not just your pain alone. Whatever you do to yourself in your life is going to cause pain on someone else 10 times more. Because believe it or not, people do give a shit about you, and they will care, especially if you kill yourself. Especially if you do something to harm yourself, they will care. They'll care more about that because of the pain that you hurt, the pain that you caused them. Now, for some suicide attempts, that's exactly what they want. So suicide attempts are not serious, are largely a cry for help, but they're to be taken seriously because it's a thought. It's a serious thought. I've seen more than my share of suicide attempts because one girl in particular, one soldier, she was fooling around with a married man. She wasn't taking it seriously. She thought she was going to have a nice little, take him away from the wife, do the whole like steal the man thing and run off into the green, the paradise land, and it wasn't happening. He didn't want that.
Yeah.
He wanted a piece of ass. That's what he wanted, and he got it. She wasn't having it. What'd she do? She tried to kill herself with her razor blades, her Lady Bic razor blades.
So how much do you think, I mean, people have personal issues all over the world, everybody, civilians and military. How much of the additional stress of the military life do you think like magnifies? Because when I hear you and other veterans talking about it, it's like a lot of these social issues almost happen kind of in a petri dish because there's a forced interaction and there's, you're with teams of people. It's like when people have affairs, it's usually at work, but in civilian life, you're still going home to your spouse. Whereas
even in the Army, you're still going home to your spouse. If you're not, back up. If you're not deployed, you are. So affairs happen stateside, just like they happen overseas.
Sure.
Just like they happen in civilian life, they happen stateside, they happen overseas. There's a saying in the military. TDY means temporarily divorced. Desert deployment queens, Korean queens, that kind of stuff. All that stuff creeps up because it means I don't have to maintain my character because no one's gonna know. Who's gonna know? Well, everyone's gonna know. And not if you're in a relationship and you're committed and you do something that harms that commitment to where it ends up sacrificing the relationship, it ends up ending it. That's an event that leads to something else. If you have removed someone that you've committed yourself to, or someone that you just care about, let's just not even say married, let's just say someone you care about, you've removed that from your life, so your own actions, that thought will catch up with you. And it always usually does. And it leads to depression. It leads to all kinds of stuff. And then that leads down to that dark path where dark thoughts happen, where you realize the life that you wanted to have, you can't have anymore. And the life that you did have is gone. It's a dark road. It's a really dark road for some folks. It was for me, for my own issues and why I wanted to do things. But I wouldn't say I was really considering suicide. I think I was just more of a just a really depressed kind of guy at the time. But it was a moment in my life that I regret. I hated feeling that way. Well, as soon as I got the tattoo of my kid's name on me, it was like I was a different person. I had a reason again. So my biggest message of all is, hey, there's a reason to living. There's a reason to moving forward. As far as veteran assistance goes and how things look, you know, these programs that are out there, they exist for I'll hit that word again, they exist for a reason. So civilians like yourself, anyone else who's listening, who's reading and whatnot, go to the Veterans Affairs website. There is a hotline on there that says Veterans Crisis or Veterans Suicide or Veterans Crisis Line. If you know someone who is a veteran, know someone who's having issues, call that number for them. They don't have to be the one to call. Call it for them and tell them, hey, this is what's going on. This is a guy. This is where I live. They will help you find people in your local area, get the help that person needs and deserves. And the same thing for civilians. There are crisis outlines, crisis hotlines out there for all kinds of people. Remember, like Boys Town or whatever it was back in the 80s and 90s, something like that. Those things exist for civilians too. We're talking about veterans issues, so I don't want to be too, all me, but they exist. The problem is, like you talked about, they're not widely known because it's we know about them and then we forget about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, my dad was a vet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So my dad was a veteran, and so he was part of the VFW. And what I noticed there, and this is part of my interest, part of my selfish interest in these issues, was that I observed growing up that he and all his friends, like at the VFW, they weren't necessarily suicidal, but like alcoholism was rampant.
Oh yeah.
And so what they would do is instead they would sit around at the VFW and drink and share army, military stories, and it was like I grew up hearing these stories. But what I also like one of the guys there, his son had deployed to Iraq, didn't come back, and they did funeral. I mean, hearing all of this, and he had been to Vietnam and all that, and I noticed that it was like there's all these covert issues. So like the covert alcoholism, the covert depression. I mean, a lot of those guys, and including my father, like a lot of my father's alcoholism, I'm sure started in the military. Which is not an excuse. It's just that's it became like my father used the substances over a lifetime, and I think that there's a tendency in society to want the soldiers to be strong. Like you guys are our warriors, so you're our strong point in society. So nobody wants to hear the parts that we consider to be weak,
And that's why we like the VFW and we like to commiserate amongst our own kind. Not to bring up bad memories, but that's why Chris Kyle still went and shot with veterans. It was his community. It's what he knew. It's therapeutic.
Right.
If you can talk to people about who have similar backgrounds with you, and I'm sure you've experienced this in your own career, you don't want to talk to somebody who doesn't understand you about your problems.
Right.
So, and that happened with Alan. He had a doctor who did not understand him because the doctor had not deployed. He flat out said, I don't want to talk to you because you haven't deployed. I don't care if you wear the same uniform as I do. You're not my brother. Until you put some sand in those boots. That was his outlook on life. I can't fault him for it, but I went to him and I said, someone's got to talk to you. I can't be the one to talk to you because I'm your boss. It's a little different coming from me. You need to talk to somebody else. And he did eventually. It took a suicide attempt to get there. But like you talked about, like your father, alcoholism starts out with it's a deeply personal thing. It happens. It's individual. It's scary when you look at how it can develop. Usually it's not caused by the military or anything the military has done to an individual, but it's caused by something that person perceives, has done themselves, um, or somebody has done to them. And that somebody is usually somebody very personal, somebody very close and intimate to that individual.
Mm-hmm.
And alcohol, like any drug, is seen as a release mechanism for that frustration. It helps alleviate the tension and problems. But I will always say this: if you can have a beer with somebody and talk about whatever issues and talk just general bullshit with somebody, if you can talk to somebody over a beer, you can hammer out a lot of the world's problems. You can hammer out a lot of your problems and your devils. Um, I know I have. That's how I've gotten people to open up to me when they've come to me with issues. I always tell them, listen, let's get out of here. Let's go have a drink. Um, I need you to open up and be a little. And I needed that person to open up and be a little emotional.
Yeah.
And let the tears and the demons flow. For some people, it's scary to do that. For others, it's a little better.
Yeah.
I won't say that alcohol. I mean, alcohol's it's a devil and an angel all in the same. It just depends on who you're doing it with, and if you're doing it alone, it can be pretty damning. Um, this the all these issues kind of come around to they come back around to being satisfied with one such station in life, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it's hard to explain because it's such an individual issue. Um, about why you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. And I know I sound kind of preachy when I say that, but I say that because I want each and every one of the people that I've ever have shared a uniform with to feel like you have an outlet, um, just like millions of people do. Facebook's an outlet, Twitter's an outlet. I wouldn't recommend standing on the street corner these days. It tends to get you arrested and thrown you in a loony bin. Um, but you have an outlet. You should use it. Write a blog, start a video, do that kind of stuff. Go give TEDx talks. Go give talks to veterans groups. Go give talks to other groups. Go give talks to colleges. Go give talks to students who, psych students and sociology students who are trying to understand stuff. All these people are out there willing to listen, willing to understand your point of view, and give you a little bit of a spotlight to kind of shine your to kind of air your grievances and get some things off your chest. I personally, I don't have a need for that anymore. I've kind of worked my own demons out, and I've kind of worked my own way through the dark side of life that I think of, and I look at my kids and I see I have a great life to live for. For me, my dark side, and I'll say this for a lot of veterans, and it's true. We have lived a life of war, and it is addictive. We love deploying. We really do. We hate garrison life. Every single one of us comes back and we go, when the fuck can we go out the door again? Because I don't want to stay around here for this crap. Especially the new garrison army, which is full of social justice warriors and all the happy holding hand stuff. It's ridiculous. And I say that, and I jest. You think I'm joking? There's a story, and it hit Fox News pretty heavy last couple of weeks, and some the other sites. But somebody wrote in there about white privilege, and they wrote in there like, wait a minute, the military itself is like 65% white male, or 65% white, and I think close to like 80% male. I know my numbers are off. I don't have the reports in front of me, but like you're talking about white privilege in a briefing about equal opportunity. I have lived in my 13-year active duty career. My first boss was Jewish. My first colonel was Jewish. My first direct line supervisor was a female. My first sergeant was a black female. I had a black sergeant major. I'm sorry, I had a female sergeant major. She became a very senior sergeant major at one point. She became like the sergeant major. That's the equivalent of like I don't know. It's the best way to describe a sergeant major to a civilian. Just another senior leader. She was a senior leader at one point in her career of a very sensitive organization.
Mm-hmm.
There is diversity in the military, more so than there is anywhere else in the American workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So you have social justice warriors making this crap up, and you go, what am I doing? I'm sitting here. I'm supposed to be training myself to be a fighter or somebody supporting a war fighter. This is what I'm supposed to do. And here I am sitting around listening to the Stuart Smalley episode. Gosh darn it. I'm good enough. And damn it, people like me. No, I don't need that. I want to know how to do my job. I want to teach people my job. I want to teach other people how to do their jobs because I have to support them. How I can help them out. I want to know how to do my job better to make sure the shooter on the ground can do his job better. A lot of us, many of us, most of us have that mentality. And when you have that mentality and you extract this out and you put us in front of PowerPoint for hours on end and you say, you now have to sit here and listen how to make yourself feel good. Or you got to listen here because you're a rapist. If you could see the Armed Forces Network, which is like our, television stuff. If you could see the commercials that are put out there by AFN, their PSAs about any number of things, information from the command, weather, trips to the nice places, but they also include the mandatory EO, sexual harassment, sexual assault stuff. If you have a penis in the military, probably you're a rapist. Just across the board, you're a rapist.
God.
There's no excuse for that, or there's no exemptions. That's how I felt. That's how I always felt coming out of those, watching those slideshows and seeing the commercials, and I go, this is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to make light of rape or anything, but I think of Step Brothers, and I go, I'm so not a raper. But you can't fight this. You can't fight that because you have to sit here, you have to shut up, you have to listen to the stuff, you have to nod and smile to get through the day because you have to go through these slideshows. Now, it's what all that really, and I'm not saying that to demean victims of harassment or rape, or assault, excuse me. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm talking about is the way we go about doing it. It's a slideshow. No one likes watching slideshows. No one likes sitting down and being told that they're the problem all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When I have watched leadership commit the exact same crime in the military. Adultery is a crime. And it stemmed from harassment. When I watched the exact same crime from leadership, who then gets off scot-free, and then they hammer subordinates. You get, unequal amounts of punishment because someone's an officer, someone's enlisted. Do you see that happen? You go, this is a load of horse shit. That guy actually harassed a girl. He assaulted her in the office, but then when he goes and does that to that girl, it's okay because one's a certain rank and one isn't. I don't understand this. Yeah. So another case in point, and that does happen, and it's mainly because the rank houses privileges sometimes, and then it takes a while for that to kind of get noticed, and then when people start bitching, then it gets brought back around to saying you hammered this guy and you didn't hammer that guy. What the fuck? And now, granted, that was a couple of years ago. Things have changed in the realm of the military and sexual harassment and assault. It's more likely that everyone gets hammered nowadays, and no investigation's done. And we don't care what the truth is. We're just going to separate the parties, and whoever made the first accusation is going to be the one that gets. It's kind of like if you're both robbing a bank, if you're the one that comes forward first, you get the plea deal. So if you're the one that comes forward and levies the accusation, well then we're going to treat you with kid gloves. Meanwhile, the accuser gets to be treated like shit. Now that's not official, but it does happen, and it's mainly because of the way the briefings are structured and how the training is executed. Investigations are not everyone's strong suit. So that has a part of it. Um, and then that's another issue itself. That could also lead to deeper issues of someone's personal life, because getting labeled as a sexual offender or a sexual harasser or assault perpetrator, and not being able to defend yourself, that harms your career forever, and that could have a detrimental effect on your status as a veteran. Now,
That's
granted,
interesting.
oh
That's
yeah,
interesting because in civilian life, and I saw this. I mean, when I first started at one company, a tech company, they wouldn't leave me I was on my engineering rotation, and they wouldn't leave me alone in the labs because there had been some woman who accused some engineer of sexual harassment at some point in time. And I mean, I worked with the guy for years. I don't see it. I don't. Nobody believed. As a result, they had this covert rule about, so, but it was really career damaging for this guy to have a false claim. And we've seen this in civilian
yeah,
companies since the 80s, and it's really, having worked in corporate for 7-8 years, I saw firsthand how
oh, yeah.
much of a problem this is in terms of getting shit done. I mean, yes, obviously harassment's bad at work and all of that, but we'd sit down, we're forced to watch all this human resources videos and blah, blah, blah. And, the thing about it is, what, in my mind, and maybe I'm wrong, this is just my civilian outward looking, framework on it. Like civilian life, we're subject to the SJWs and blah, blah, blah. We've moved away from meritocracy as a whole. And the thing that, in military type situations, it's like nobody has time for that. Like you're talking life or death. We're not talking paperwork to get some, parts, made somewhere and sent back and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So from the standpoint of efficiency and also strength, it seems like it would be a really damaging thing to do to the
Oh,
military
it's
as a whole.
detrimental, and so false accusations are definitely detrimental. But in the actual acts of assault and harassment are truly deleterious to a unit's cohesion and
Mhm.
overall the Army's cohesion, the military. What's worse is when the perpetrators are not prosecuted in a timely manner. When you see someone who is engaging in harassment and you report it, and it takes time, and the punishment that comes, harassment or assault, and the punishment that comes down isn't meted out the way it should be.
Mhm.
It's like it's a slap on the wrist. Now, I will caveat this. I have to go back to 2 years when I was active. That's what I was seeing. Nowadays, I watch the blotter reports. We get an update on like judicial stuff that happens in the command, and it's almost immediate now. But it's almost like a sledgehammer instead of a scalpel.
Mhm.
We're going to beat you over the head, everyone, with this until morale improves, type thing. But I used to watch for thing where we would hear about an incident where somebody touched a woman inappropriately, another soldier, and you're like, what the fuck? Did you report it? Yeah, I reported it. What happened? I don't know. How do you not know what happened? You reported it to the commander. Yep. What's he doing about it? I don't know. I'm not a commander. So you go and talk to the commander. Hey, what are you doing about X, Y, and Z? And he goes, I got an investigation. Okay. All right. When's that going to be done? It's got 45 days to be done. 45 days comes and goes. Okay. What happened to douchebag that did what to, or did whatever to this chick? We're just going to move him to another unit on base. Are you fucking kidding me? No. He should be arrested. He should be charged and booted out the army.
Mhm.
Just because you don't have enough evidence to charge him with rape, get him with something else that he's definitely guilty of. He inappropriately touched somebody it wasn't professional. You could definitely get him on all that. But for a long time, especially if these people were senior in rank, commanders or senior individuals were afraid to go after these people.
Mm.
So I will say one thing that DSJWs may have accomplished, and that's the bludgeoned way of approaching sexual harassment, sexual assault type issues.
Mhm.
Instead of it being a scalpel and judicious, it's more of a mass punishment for all, which never does anything good. Um, so there's that to it. There's that aspect to military life now.
That sounds like, I mean, it's like going to Catholic school where, one person screws up and everybody gets hit.
I wouldn't know. I went to public school. That's why I'm horrible at math. So we talked about a lot of deep issues here. I guess I could talk about some fun stuff too. Something I think that maybe a lot of your listeners will appreciate. Everybody knows, and you've had several people comment that military loves porn. On almost every tour I've gone on, you hand out your external hard drive, and you're like, dude, just put whatever movies you got on there. Not expecting, or sometimes you are. And I kid you not, there's almost always the vast majority of stuff that gets downloaded onto your external hard drive is porn. And I'm talking like I had a terabyte hard drive this last time. This dude put on at least half of a terabyte's worth of porn on my hard drive. And I'm like, I thought you were going to put movies because we've got a year doing this. Or sorry, I had 6 months. Like I got 6 months sitting here looking at you. I don't need to see that much porn. I was like, I just want movies. I just watch movies, man. So he's like, wow, there's movies in there. I had to go through each and every video because we didn't label them all. And I was like, oh, this is so much. So it was ridiculous. Once I found a couple of shows, I just deleted the whole thing. But the other part to it is, so I was at a, I don't want to name this place. It still exists probably. There was yeah, I'm not kidding. And I could send you pictures and you could maybe post them, but I'm not posting them. So there's an establishment on a very popular, widely known base in Afghanistan. This establishment is sort of like a speakeasy. It's the only I used to go there for beer every Friday and Saturday. Real beer, not the near beer, not the non-alcoholic beer, but Torberg, which is a good beer out of Denmark. Right. That and wine from Germany. The cool thing, we had wine from the Rhineland, which is amazing. Yeah, I've never done tours sober. The whole everyone always talks about not drinking overseas, and I'm like, man, I was with a unit and we made our own alcohol in Iraq. So, but in Afghanistan, I found an actual bar. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. I'll kind of wrap a few events into one night. So, one night we're sitting out, having a beer or two, or 5 maybe. I'm done with my job. I do my job for the day. I'm going to have a couple beers. I'm going to walk back. And I knew there was an operation going on. I knew all about it. I didn't have a need to be involved in the command center. It had nothing to do with me. I just happened to know about it. Mm-hmm. I look off into the distance and you hear this rocket. You hear this roaring sound, and these rockets are taking off. And everyone else around us is like, what the fuck is that? And you're like, well, I look up and I go, oh, that's a bad night for somebody. They're about to die. Like, what is that? Man, that's a big ass fucking rocket.
Oh shit!
It sounds like a spaceship. It sounds like the space shuttle is taking off, and it was taking off from less than a mile from where we're sitting drinking beer at. We were drinking beer at this one site too one night, and fucking Taliban threw rockets at us. It lands about maybe not maybe 150, 200 meters away from us. So here's a bunch of, well, not the drunks were not, but some of us were definitely buzzed. We're running down with medical kits to go treat any wounded. The rocket landed maybe 10 feet in front of a barracks. It scattered rocks everywhere. It scorched the earth, but it didn't hit the actual buildings. Damn lucky. Only 2 dudes got hit. But there's a bunch of us semi-drunk people holding all these medic kits, trying to figure out what we're going to do. We're like, people are looking at us because we're all in civilian clothes. And like, we are so out of place. So then again, one night in Afghanistan, chaplain comes walking into the bar. He comes walking into the bar and he's looking for one of the girls who I knew frequented the bar quite often. And it was hilarious. It was a complete Star Wars scene. cantina was going. The cantina band was playing, and then the music just stops as soon as he walks in.
Oh shit.
But now the one thing I haven't mentioned about this bar,
Mhm.
and it's the most intriguing part yet. It's a bar. It's serving beer in Afghanistan. There's coalition partners all around: the French, the Germans. There's some Egyptians, Koreans, South Africans. Contractor was down there. Some South African chick, and Kiwis, the Brits, the Australians. All those cats were there. We're all having a good time. The South African chick is dancing on the brass pole. We had a stripper pole in this bar in Afghanistan. And the chaplain looks and sees her, and she's topless. Well, we didn't know what to do. So someone walked up to the chaplain and offered him a beer. Like, do you want to sit and watch for a while? Because we don't know what you're doing here. And he's like, I'm looking for some other girl, and her name is, he rattled off some rank and name. We're like, we don't know who that is. What's her stage name? It was bad. Yeah, we were a bunch of cretins. It was a good place, but that was a good place to kind of relax and chill out. And those places exist. So if downrange, I always tell soldiers, I was like, don't go looking for alcohol. It will find you down here, but don't ever share it with anybody because somebody will rat you out, either to your commander or to your chaplain.
So you're not, so you weren't allowed to have out. Is that?
Oh no, it's definitely against the rules.
Really?
For Americans anyway. So we have what's called General Order Number 1, which is no alcohol, no used to be no sex. Then that got changed to no non-married. If you're married, you can have sex. If you're not married to someone who's not married, you can have sex. There's some other parts of General Order Number 1 when you're deployed. But the big one was no alcohol.
Got it.
And I've never obeyed that rule. I had friends ship me Lafroig. I had friends ship me my wife. She shipped me so I told my wife one time, this last time I went over, which was a couple years ago. I'm on the border of Pakistan. I'm drinking fine scotch, smoking cigars, lighting a fire on the border, and it's a great time. I've actually shared this on Twitter and some of the photos from that tour. So I told her, I was like, hey, we got actual Red Bull in our chow hall. And so she's like, oh, okay. And my wife was a bartender. So what does a bartender do when she thinks of Red Bull? She sent me this huge bottle of Jägermeister. And I had no idea what to do. It's like, when the hell have you ever known me to drink Jägermeister? Or even drink whatever the hell you make with Jägermeister and Red Bull? And she goes, I don't know. You said you had a Red Bull. And I was like, oh, crap. So we had this bender one time with these people who have not touched alcohol in like 6-7 months. They're there for like a year. They haven't touched alcohol in forever. So their tolerance is really skewed. And they're getting shit-faced. And one of the guys we were on my team, he takes a camel spider. And if you've never seen a camel spider,
those huge things.
Google it. It's disgusting. It's there's actually a shitty B-rated horror movie coming out, kind of like the stuff you'd see on sci-fi, called like Spiders or Deserts. It's about camel spiders that explode out of the desert and eat helicopters, and it's kind of like Tremors but with camel spiders and the army. So it's kind of scary. But so people are getting drunk, and you know how you are when you're drunk. Your guard's down a little bit. He takes a camel spider and he throws it on this chick's back, and it crawls up to her neck, and those little tentacles are tapping away at her neck, and she is freaking out. And it was one of the best nights I had in Afghanistan. I got to say that. So if you see camel spiders, look at those pictures and just imagine that being on the back of your neck. Imagine being on the back of your neck when you're wasted now. That's fucked up.
Yuck.
Yeah,
it's like so terrifying. A friend of mine showed me a video from when he was deployed with that. Like, oh,
they're horrible. They're absolutely horrible. So what else is there? I mean, we've talked about a lot of stuff: suicide, job-related issues. What else you got on your mind? I will say this. I got to go back to. I was going to write a blog post, and I started writing, and my thoughts got disjointed.
Well, I mean,
You.
this has been great. I mean, the main thing was, how about this? You were going to talk about Jade Helm, so
Oh,
we'll end on that note, and you could tell us about that, and then we'll let you go. But I'd love to. I've really enjoyed this. This has been such a great stream. I really appreciate the way you communicate, and you've really taught us a lot. So I would love to have you back anytime to talk more
yeah.
about these things
Well,
if you have time.
I'm honest. I'm blunt. It's kind of like that Suicide and Happiness cartoon.
Mhm.
There's one that says, "What's one of your negative character traits?" I'm honest. And he goes, "That's not a character trait." And the guy goes, "That's a stupid fucking thing to say." I'm bluntly honest, and it gets me into trouble quite a bit. No, I was gonna say, so two things before I get on or one thing before I get on the Jade Helm and conspiracy issues. So the yesterday with your rant, the reason why I was sparked to send you the message on Twitter was, and I started off saying this, and I kind of got distracted. Is we get feeling like we're alone in this world and understanding some of our issues. When you mentioned how the Social Justice League is misappropriating PTSD and the word trigger, and they absolutely are. And to me, it's personally insulting when I hear some feminazi or some hipster douchebag go, "Well, you're making me feel bad. You're triggering my white privilege," or whatever the hell they say
Mhm.
nowadays. And I look at these people and I want to choke them and punch them in the throat. I have a visceral reaction to people that are just stupid cowards, and these people are it. They're
Yeah.
cowards down to the core. They're so afraid of their own prejudices, they project them on everyone else. And I'm sorry, but this white boy from the South gives two shits what color you are.
Mhm.
Um, I'm married to a Mexican, for crying out loud, and that doesn't. No one cares of my family or me. No one gives a shit.
Yeah.
Um, so with the military, you come from all different walks of life. I grew up with my best friends lived in the ghetto in the countryside. My one of my great friends from high school, he grew up in the projects.
Mhm.
He never swam a day in his life, and that little black kid joined the Navy. For crying out loud, he's been in the Navy ever since. Now he's working with SEAL teams down in Norfolk. Oh, so hang on a second. Hey, give me a few seconds. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem. And for those of you listening while we're hanging out here waiting, I put Kudzu's his Twitter profile in the description, and I want to thank all of you for listening to this, because this is it's really cool. Like I'm reading right now through the comments, especially from those of you who've had similar experiences. And I want to, like, anybody who wants to come on stream and talk about their experiences being a veteran, I would love to do that. That's going to be a project. So just hit me up on Twitter at the Mercedes XXX, or you can find me on Facebook. You can email me, mercedescaxx@gmail.com. And I'm like super happy to chat with any of you, because I think that I'm personally interested in it, but also I think it's great just to have kind of a discourse about these things and talk about it. And I think, when we're talking about things like SJWs and misappropriation of terms, I think a lot of this is ignorance. I think a lot of these hipster types who use these terms honestly have never been exposed to people who really have had these issues. And because of that, they don't know. So I get irritated by it, but instead, we could do our best to educate. Plus, these are interesting stories. I think everybody's got a story. I do, but I also think that veterans and people who've experienced these, when you face life and death, it kind of gives you a different perspective. So that's kind of my invitation to anyone who wants to call in or talk about these things. I'm reading through here, just great conversation, you guys. It's really cool. And I'm honestly honored that that people want to take the time to come on stream and just chat with me about it. I'm just some porn actress, you know. I'm reading here, Causation says anyone suffering from PTSD should research ayahuasca and iboga. I don't know how to pronounce that. Apparently, Liana K is doing a piece on PTSD pretty soon, according to Fox Gaming. So that'll be nice. And she's really great. I forget, you know, look her up on Twitter, Liana K. And she had some issues. Mildred says, I think they've been exposed, but they're too wrapped in their own world, like an Ouroboros. I think that's true. You know, that's the thing. This is why I fucking lose it sometimes on the SJWs, because they're so goddamn selfish and narcissistic. They're like some of the most selfish fucking people I've ever experienced on the planet. I mean, here, like, I'm reading through these comments. I talk to you guys on Twitter. I hear real fucking stories of real adversity. I mean, things that are just serious. And then I have to listen to that Melody, whatever, talk about Twitter PTSD. I mean, that just makes me angry. Makes me so mad. One Ironaut, love you too. And Hollow Tempest wants to know if we're going to do a stream on the Calgary Expo fiasco. You know what? I was talking about that earlier. I was talking about that earlier on Shannon's stream. And we talked about that. I think, you know, again, you're dealing with SJW field boxes. And I also think that it's that kind of behavior that makes women look bad as a whole. Because they literally, the SJW women literally exemplify everything that they claim feminism is fighting against. So they say, oh, there's this stereotype of women behaving in such a way, and then they do it and they perpetuate the stereotype. I mean, realistically, who cares if somebody has a different opinion at an expo? That's why people go to expos, really, right? I mean, I don't want to go to an expo that's a hug box. I like to hear different people's opinions. It's how we learn in life. It's how we learn. We learn by being wrong, and we also learn by being ignorant and then doing some investigation. So, you know, the Calgary Expo fiasco was, to me, a perfect case in point example of everything that's wrong with the SJW hug box. I mean, from what I read, and I haven't listened to Allison's recorded rant about why she, you know, what they said was abuse or harassment. I don't know. But from what I could tell, it just seemed like, you know, the honey badgers had rubbed everyone the wrong way, because they're in their SJW hug box, and the honey badgers won't do it. And so, you know, they told them to leave. Like, they actually made them leave, and they didn't give them any notice. It was just really disrespectful. Also, just from a respect standpoint, even if they disagreed, even if they wanted to kick him out, the way they did it was really shitty. And this is why the SJW types remind me of mean high school girls. So that's kind of my take on that. And then now, I guess Allison's being banned from all comic expos in Canada. I mean, that's absurd. So they're blacklisting her. It's crazy.
I'm ready.
All right.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Great. Nope. No problem. We're talking about SJWs.
Oh, well. As a like I was saying before, as a southern white male, I couldn't give two shits. Or if you have a penis or a vagina. What you're doing is as long as what you're doing, A, is legal, is not immoral, which I will leave up to interpretation. But I describe as immoral is, are you killing somebody? Are you doing something to somebody that they don't want you to do to them? Mm-hmm. And are you robbing somebody blind? Or unethical? As long as you're not doing that, who really gives a shit what your color and boob size is? Pecs or boobs? So I was just saying, I was like, so the military become from all different walks of life. You know, my friends growing up, he was a black kid, grew up in the projects, joined the Army or joined the Navy, has had a great career, is actually about to graduate from his master's program.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he is the first male in his family to do that. You know, that's something that's very significant for him. Others have moved on to certain statuses in life, and I kind of forgot what I was going with this because my wife called and she was a little sick, but
Oh.
I was talking. I forgot what was that? Jade Helm and what else was there?
Yeah, you were just wrapping up on that. You said you had one
Uh,
more thing, and then we're going to go into Jade Helm, and then
I,
we should
I
let you go so you can take care of your wife.
no, she's fine now. She's trying to go back to sleep, but um. So yeah, so Jade Helm. What was the question about Jade
Oh,
Helm?
there was an inquiry about it. What do you? Because we're seeing this all over. I mean, if you're at all on the different conspiracy sites or stuff like that. I mean, I think there's a lot of concern about it. I saw something on Infowars. They were talking about Walmarts are closing, and the Jade
The
Helm,
Walmart
and
closing, and they don't believe the plumbing story, right?
right.
Yeah, and the DHS is buying up the ammo to affect the market value of the ammo, right? I know.
Right.
I do go to conspiracy sites because I find them quite humorous.
Mm-hmm.
If the government was as nefarious as Infowars and the rest of that crew and the rest of the conspiracy sites out there, if the government was as nefarious, we would be much better at keeping secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And we suck at keeping secrets. Oh, now I know where I was going with the SJW thing. So let me rewind a little bit. So the Justice League, they're out there and they're attacking. They're misappropriating these terms and these triggers. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I take a personal offense to that.
Mm-hmm.
When I hear some whiny little asshole talk about their triggering their PTSD because they got called a dirty name in college or online, the online stuff really gets me.
Mm-hmm.
Turn the damn computer off. Walk away from the screen. You don't have to hang out on that site anymore. There's a billion different websites. I don't know if you noticed, but the internet has grown since 1990, whatever.
Right.
You're not limited to Prodigy chat and Yahoo chat anymore. I mean, we all know the internet was made for porn.
Exactly.
World of Warcraft told me so. So please tell me most people are getting that reference.
Yeah,
In the
I
chat.
hope
Please
so.
tell me they do. If not, I'm going to punch you off of the Ethernet. So we all know that. World of Warcraft said so. But for me, I don't dare say I have PTSD. I will not insult people's true issues where that are related to traumatic events, as by calling what I experience as PTSD. I have what I'd probably describe as an anxiety issue, and that is triggered in certain instances.
Mm-hmm.
Mine has happened to be crowds. I hate crowds that I cannot predict. It's a little weird. It's a little nuanced. But if I'm at a store, put it like this, I can walk. I just did it last week. I walked into New York City, no problem. Around 1 million plus people, didn't have a care in the world. Was fine. You take me into a grocery store, and a group of 2 to 4 or 5 people walk up behind me out of nowhere. I get a little freaked out. I'm not gonna lie, and I gotta walk away. I gotta go calm down. That's my trigger. That's a trigger. When someone is calling you a dirty name, whatever that dirty name may be, whether it's an actual insult, an actual invective, excuse me, my English is getting to suck, or a childish middle school kind of insult, and you're calling that a trigger, and your lily white ass wants to write a blog post about it and file a lawsuit and get restraining orders from some douchebag online, you don't experience PTSD. You're not affected. You're just a weak individual, and you need to grow a set of balls. So all the SJWs, if you can hear my voice, please grow a set of balls and get off the internet. And please stop trying to engage in unethical behavior when it comes to gaming reviews. That's another story for another day, right?
Yeah.
That really blew my mind. I had no idea that gaming journalism was a really big thing. The only thing I'm really experienced with is Game Informer because I have a GameStop membership. So that's all I know. But when I go on there and I see feminazis just screaming about how there's not enough female characters, and I go, what are you talking about? Oh, you're mad because Laura Croft has a nice ass and big boobs.
Right.
But she's a total badass. I don't understand this.
Right.
I'm like, why are you mad about this? Oh, and then I see them and I go, oh,
Yeah, exactly.
you're
Exactly.
projecting. You're projecting. Listen, um, there isn't a Call of Duty that's ever been made. There isn't a shooting game, a fighting game that's ever been made where the character represents my middle-aged, male pattern baldness, beer gut, slightly developed legs and upper pectoral areas, but I have a beer gut. I'm not afraid to admit it. I love beer. But you're never going to find a video game where the male character looks like, the average male. He's always some stellar shooter. He's the expert marksman. I mean, hell, Call of Duty, you're a special ops guy right off the bat, right? In fighting games,
Right.
what are the fighting guys? What do the guys in the fighting games look like? They all look like little total badasses. No,
Right.
in a real street fight, it's a skinny dude and a fat dude. That's what it's gonna look like.
Right.
So that's what always gets me. I think the thing that came closest was Grand Theft Auto. They had the fat white guy,
Oh yeah,
bald hair. That was the closest you got to what a realistic.
yeah. Real life.
So that gets me. Is like you have equality in gaming, and that's where I think our relationship on Twitter started, and
Yeah.
that and the political issues. And I was like, God, you people are killing me. First off, I didn't even know you were a thing, and now you're a thing, and you're offended because there's not enough diversity or there's not enough female gaming. I don't understand. There's a whole league devoted for female gamers. I thought I don't understand this.
Yeah,
But
plus it's the internet. You can be as anonymous as you want. I mean,
oh,
it goes back to the internet thing. Like, if you want to be a woman, they're like, well, I don't get respect being a female. All right, well then go play as a male anonymously.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
nobody
So
fucking knows. Like, stop
so
whining.
yeah, exactly right. That was the thing about if you go back to like the '90s or early 90s, the Sims. That was the big thing about the Sims. You could be whatever you want, and there was always some weird dude who was always the hot chick in the house
Right.
party. It's like this is really creepy. So to bring that up, um, tshirthell.com. I get no money from them, but I'm going to pimp this shirt out there. So back when I was a little immature, all of maybe 5 years ago, I had a T-shirt I bought from them that I used to wear a lot. Well, I had a couple of T-shirts I wore around them. I bought from that I used to wear a lot, but my favorite one that I'd wear was it was a computer screen with green text, and it said, "I am the teenage girl you jerked off to in the chat room." Greatest T-shirt ever. Well, that one and asthma is sexy, but that's another one. But so I wore that, and I used to get some really dirty looks from people. But then I look at some other people, and I look at some looks that are kind of sideways. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're the dirty old man in the chat room. So these people, you're right. They can be anonymous. They can be. I hate the phrase bullying. They can be cyber bullies, but they can be insulting. That's what they can be. So if you're feeling insulted, turn off the goddamn screen. Get away from the keyboard. Go do some push-ups. Go to a gym. Go breathe some fresh air and stop drinking Mountain Dew. And stop licking the paste. So yeah. So Jade Helm. So the conspiracy websites. If you look back and through my feed, I got followed and then quickly unfollowed by somebody who said they were Jade Hell 15 Intel. They're posting all these pictures about military equipment moving around the country in Southern California. Helicopters are flying around Central Texas. Okay, let me explain something to everyone out there about all these videos. And it's not just Jade Helm. There's a main exercises. Like look, last couple of years, it's been special ops guys flying around major metropolitan areas. And I mentioned this before too to some folks on Twitter, and I've said it before. I've taken part in exercises like this. I won't say those exercises themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I have taken part of them, and I've also planned and organized exercises within the American populace.
Mm-hmm.
No, we are not prepping you for martial law. Number one, that's impossible. I want you to quietly go through your mental calculators, everybody, and think about how large the U.S. military truly is. Even if you supplemented us with all the police forces across this country, and that's assuming absolute loyalty to our orders. Martial law is impossible in this country. We do not have the manpower to suppress 300 plus million Americans over an entire continent in 4 time zones. It's impossible. Please stop with the conspiracy theories. We can't even impose martial law on a single city. You need to think about the logistical efforts that go into that kind of stuff. It took, the case in point, in the first Gulf War alone, and that was in 1991, it took an army of 700,000 that we used against Saddam. And when we invaded, and that was just us. That was our total. I'm sorry, that was our total in strength at the time. I think we fielded about 400,000 into the desert, and that was just the U.S. contingent. That's not including the coalition. The force that took down Iraq in 2003 in a matter of weeks was only 300,000. Now, keep that in mind. That's 300,000 that drove from Kuwait to Baghdad. Baghdad was a city of some 2 million, 3 million. My history's off, or my demographics are off now, but the size of that city is quite large. Population is quite large.
Mm-hmm.
We had 300,000 people there, and we didn't wall off Baghdad, of all places. We had divisions around major cities. We couldn't wall off whole cities. 300,000 in Iraq did not engage in martial law in Iraq. Iraq is roughly is larger than the size of Georgia, if you want to give it a case in point. So, or I'll give you a frame of reference. So, your fantasies about martial law in the U.S. military being able to impose them, and Jade Helm, which is utilizing all of 1,200 special operators and some dudes from the 82nd. You think they're going to prep Texas and Utah for martial law? Please engage in some critical thinking out there.
Mm-hmm.
Please engage in critical thinking. It's crucial to your sanity, and it will help you get away from the crazy websites. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say that everything that is in the mainstream media is true and accurate. I live and breathe propaganda on a daily basis. It's part of my job. So it's really difficult for me to read a news headline and not read between the lines. You should do your own research, but think critically. 1, can you prove the accusation being made? Martial law is the accusation. They're prepping us for martial law. 2, how? How is that? You have the op order. You see what it looks like. You know where these guys are going to come from. You know roughly where the organizations are going to be, and they even have task org, which means task organization, of how large the elements are, what they're going to look like, and where they're going to be and what they're going to do. So think about that. And all the information about those organizations is online. It's on public knowledge. Mm-hmm. There's been National Geographic study or stories about them. There's been numerous movies and documentaries made about these organizations. So there's nothing really secret about who these people are and what they're capable of doing. What people don't realize is that when they go to these sites, they're asking you to believe them for one goal. They want your money. They want your money, people, and they want you to believe the story that is the perfect storm. If you're able to believe, that's like those Verizon commercials. You're willing to believe everything on the internet except for what other people are willing to tell you. You're willing to believe everything on the internet except for a story in this location. Think about that. So when someone makes the accusation, try to prove it on your own. Try to prove it on your own. They're prepping you for martial law. 2, where's the evidence? And the next step is to disprove it. It's simple research. You're an engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have a theory, you have a problem, and you have to obtain a solution. Don't you always try to do things that counteract that solution to see if that solution is the best option and the most viable?
Of course. Yep.
So if you can't do that with these problems that are ethereal and they're intangible and they're political in nature and they're big scary words like martial law, if you can't disprove it, if you can disprove the theory that martial law is being prepped, and that's what Jade Helm is for. If you can disprove it, it's probably not going to happen. The simplest solution is usually well, I don't need to finish that. The problem is people overthink things. They project their worst fears on the government, on society, on everybody. And these people are usually, I'll be blunt, they're usually insecure. They can't think through problems very well. They have a mental block from being able to actually. Someone's actually tweeting me because I tweeted back to the Jade Helm people. I said, because you don't like people calling you out on your bullshit. So if you can't think through these problems and you can't reverse engineer your own solution and you cannot apply critical thinking to the problem at hand, you're failing yourself and your fellow man in being an intelligent individual.
Well, it seems like to me, and look, I mean, I definitely think there are a lot of things in history. Like if you read Tudor history or Roman history, you find out that there were conspiracies, and a lot of it happens in this kind of oligarchical level where there's, these people are maneuvering for power. Yeah. But the current, what concerns me about the martial law conspiracy theories is that what it does is it actually pits civilians against military. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest concerns. Ooh, sounds like I lost him, but that's, I'll just keep talking to you guys. I think that that's one of the issues with a lot of the conspiratorial, because I think it's good to question things. I mean, for me, the mainstream media is kind of a, you never know, like what's being bought and sold and what's advertorial and what's truth and all that. But when you start hearing conspiracy theories about how there's like legion of humans in the military who are going to shoot on civilians and, they're the bad guy, or you start, my father's family were part of the Socialist Labor Party. And these are people who'd grown up in a commune during the 1920s. And they
Oh, I'm sorry. I got distracted real quick.
Yeah, no, that's no problem.
I got pulled away.
No, it's good. Well, I was just telling them. I mean, I think part of it is it gets dangerous when you have conspiracy theories that turn actually the military into an us versus them. It's one thing to say, okay, let's question things, but it's another when you say, well, they are going to shoot on us and they are our enemy. We need to arm against they. And I think people forget, like I don't think most military members are going to be willing to shoot and kill civilians. Like I don't see that happening.
People have they have what I call the perfect storm scenario. They have a perfect storm scenario where they take what they think happened in the past. They have a bad actor they believe is currently engaged in the present time, and they take all these bad stories and they couple them together, and it creates that perfect storm of all these bad actors and these negative impacts, or these negative vibes, if you will, and they don't try to disprove it. They let it consume them, and they let it become an objective. See, it's not the U.S. military that's going to engage martial law. It's the mercenaries. Or it's the brainwashed Obama army because we had to take loyalty oaths to Obama. No, we did not have to take a loyalty oath to Obama. I have been in the army for 3 presidents now. Clinton, Bush, and Obama. So my loyalty is to whom? Believe me, I've carried a pocket constitution around in my uniform as long as I've been in. I've had that pocket constitution since I was in middle school. People, they don't want to, they want to believe their worst fear sometimes because doing anything else is too hard.
Yeah.
And that seems to be part of the problem. It's kind of like it's kind of like when you have a personal relationship and the person that you cannot believe is telling the truth anymore because you don't want to believe that the fact that they might actually be telling you the truth, and the truth hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in my point, in this case, it's Jade Helm is not you're prepping for martial law. The U.S. military is not going to engage in martial law and impose it upon the American populace. Just like there was not, what was the other one? A couple years ago, there was not a Russian army offloading in San Francisco in containers. There's another late one, the ISIS camp down in Mexico, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was that one. Well, let's think logically about it. Now, I'm not going to say that there aren't some bad actors in Mexico who are engaging in Islamic terrorism. That's another issue altogether.
Right.
But is it ISIS or is it somebody else?
Right.
Why would a drug cartel allow what is arguably the most widely popularized violent jihadi group to operate in its backyard at one of the most widely watched border checkpoints?
Right.
Within earshot of a very large intelligence apparatus at Fort Bliss. And that's also public knowledge. You can look that up if people feel so inclined. It's called Epic. It's a great place. The thought process that goes in all that is, well, let me back up. The perfect storm for that is, well, Obama's soft on immigration. The border's porous. And ISIS wants to kill us, and the cartels are money hungry and want to work with anyone. Well, all those things are true, more or less. Obama is soft on illegal immigration. The borders are porous. ISIS does want to kill us. And the cartels are willing to work with people who give them money. True. Problem with that is that doesn't fit into ISIS's modus operandi. That's not exactly how they operate, at least not yet. I have to caveat that because I can't predict the future.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the important thing is people see these sensationalist type stories and they want to jump on them because they want to believe so bad. They refuse to engage in critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And all I ever ask for people in my professional life and on Twitter and Facebook and all my friends that are out there, I say just take a step back from the story, look at it a little more. Can you corroborate it with something else? Another story from a different source, from a different agency, from a different kind of reporting, and a different kind of original reporting.
Mm-hmm.
And with as many sources that are out there nowadays, that is very easy to do. So it's a lot easier to do that now than it was in the pre-social media age. If you can't corroborate it, then it's not credible.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not entirely true. Just means it's not credible. It means you need to take it with a grain of salt. Now, if you can corroborate it, can you disprove it with something else? And that's where people tend to fall apart. They don't want to do that because it's too hard. And for some people, it is. It is too hard to think critically because they don't. Like I keep hitting on the same wickets here. They just kind of refuse to want to believe anything that's opposite of their own mentality. It's kind of like the SJWs who don't want to believe that maybe there isn't as much harassment as you think there is, or maybe there isn't as much pain and suffering as you really think there is. Maybe not all cops are racist bastards. Maybe the military doesn't want to engage in martial law.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not all men want to rape you. That kind of thing.
Right.
So they gotta be comfortable with accepting some truths into your life when it comes to these kinds of conspiracy theories, because the truths might tell you, hey, there's no conspiracy, there's no plot. Right. Now, I will not agree with everything that has been done in our nation's history, that's for sure. And there are some points in time where the Tuskegee experiments come to mind where that kind of shit has happened, and but it wasn't a conspiracy. They flat out did it. They flat out did what they were doing.
Right.
But back to Jade Helm, the exercise is not taking place in all of Florida through all of California. That's a huge geographic area, and we're talking 1,200 people from the openly published website or openly published source material that's out there. Think about that. How are you going to impose or even simulate or condition people to any kind of activity if you have 1,200 people that span well over 3,000 miles?
Right.
So the fun part is when they post photographs of stuff of military equipment and they don't describe it. They just say, "Oh, there's tanks moving around Southern California." Like this one feed that I have that followed me, then unfollowed me. Well, I hate to tell you, but Southern California also houses the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, which is where we send a bunch of units to go train. That's what they do. And in fact, that's all they do on a yearly basis, at least once a month. There's an exercise going on that base. In Central Texas, there were some helicopters flying around. Well, in Central Texas, there's also Fort Hood, which is the largest Army installation in the free world. And there's Camp Bliss and Fort Sam Houston down in San Antonio. And there's Goodfellow in San Angelo. There's military all over the place. So just because you see some activity doesn't mean A, it's Jade Helm. Probably is not. And B, it's more likely definitely not going to be us conditioning you for martial law. When I do these exercises, when I've engaged in them, and I actually just did one a few weeks ago, we do them because the environment is. Sorry, my dogs are licking the door. We do them because the environment is similar to what we're looking for downrange.
Got it.
I got it. We're not going to blend into the population down there. It's not what we're trying to do. We're looking to simulate the environment and the type of people we're dealing with. Case in point, my exercise that I participated in was in support of another unit going to a third world country or countries where they had one major population center and the rest were shot out to remote outposts. Well, we used one major population center here in the Midwest, and the rest of the teams were in very rural counties.
Got it.
So that's the terrain we're simulating. We're trying to simulate that. We're trying to simulate the type of people that are in those locations. Hey, it's people who are suspicious of outsiders, people who are going to take notice. How do I get you to sit here without shooting at me? How do I get you to let me come into your eating establishment and leave me alone? That kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense. And this is why it's so important, I think, to just ask questions.
Oh,
and, I think it's easy to get caught in the hysteria, get caught in different things. So it's just, instead of making up your mind, and this is why we go back to SGWs, this is why Gamergate was a thing, is basically it's the logical people of this world saying, hey, let's ask questions and not make conclusions about things until we know, until we have some more information, more data on this. No, not all men are rapists. No, the military doesn't want to kill everybody. It's a really simple principle that we seem to be increasingly losing in this world.
We are, because people don't like, there was an article that I read and I wish I had it saved. I think I have it on my phone. It was titled "The Dangers of Focusing on STEM." And it was interesting because, we have this huge emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and math in our schools now. Well, and that's all very technical. And then when we talked about, you have to throw an anti-hypothesis at it. Sometimes you have to disprove your hypothesis. Well, yeah, you do. But in critical thinking, which is usually something you encounter in the liberal arts, that's missing entirely. They're not taking that part of engineering, that scientific methodology, that part that says I need to challenge my own hypothesis sometimes. That's completely missing from liberal arts. It's gone. And that's where all the Justice League is getting their crap from, is those liberal arts colleges. That's what they're doing. So they go get their women's studies or their ethnic studies or their sociology, their psychology, their criminal justice. They do all that. And I'm a criminal justice major, and I can tell you there are very few people in the criminal justice, or at least in the school that I went to, in that degree field, who were throwing up things that were counter to what they thought was the popular belief. When I brought up recidivism and the use of recidivism rates and nonviolent offenders, and how that leads to violent offenders and a higher recidivism rate, and it does. The statistics are there. My professor was like, no one's written a paper like this in the last couple of years. He was amazed. And then you had to write a synopsis of that in your little discussion board, and people were like, I've never heard of this before. And I was like, well, the stats are there. You just got to read them. And then I even had it broken down. The recidivism isn't related to race of white judges and black criminals. It's just once you're convicted of a nonviolent crime, you're more than likely, and you're put away into a non-rehabilitative program, you're more than likely to commit a crime in the next 3 to 5 years. 66% rate, 66% I believe is the rate. So, and these people had not actually read this material, and it ran counter to the popular notion of if you commit a crime, I'm going to lock you up until you break or until you reform yourself. Mm-hmm. Not that saying that, there's not room for that, but my point is people didn't want to believe it. They didn't want to actually accept it. Then that's fine. Don't believe it, but can you disprove my theory? No, you can't. I can disprove your theory, though, and that's what people are. That's where the Justice League kind of fails at. Is like, I can point to plenty of examples where you're wrong. You can't really point to anywhere I'm wrong. You just want to attack and attack and attack and attack, and you insult, and you block, or you kick you out of what does it happen? They kick them out of a convention.
The Calgary Con, yep. Yeah. We were talking about that. This is, and this is what I was saying when you were taking a break. It's really when emotionality is taking precedent over logic, and it's funny because the SJW types literally prove exactly what they claim they're trying to disprove with feminism. So it's total projection, because they say well, women aren't damsels, women aren't illogical, and then they proceed to behave illogically and as damsels. So they actually make all women look bad by virtue of how they behave. Mm-hmm. And then when one of us, and see, part of the reason I spoke out on it is they don't get to call me a misogynistic, racist. Like I'm an ethnic female who happens to be in a relationship with a woman. So like they don't get to pull those cards with me. And that's, this is the problem, is like they do the straw man thing every single time somebody with a better argument comes out.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I liked about when I've actually read some of their attacks on you is they always point to like, oh, your occupation. And I'm like, yeah, her occupation is not exactly normal. It's not traditional, but that's not what she's talking about. Why is her occupation irrelevant? If she was a fucking lawyer, you'd be all over it. But and that's what kills me, is like they go after you and they go after others and to attack them about the one thing they think they can score a simple, childish, minuscule style point on, and they fail to actually acknowledge the argument being made because they can't counter the argument. And that's important for everybody who's listening, is like, if you notice you're being insulted by anyone, and this happens to me as a conservative all the time, if you notice you're being insulted, you've already won the argument. We have a saying in my side of the field that says, if they call you a racist, you've probably won the argument. Just walk away at that point. Drop mic, walk away. It happens more often than you think, and it's like, you call me a racist and I'm a bigoted and I hate immigrants and I hate Mexicans. Like, I'm married to a Mexican. My mother-in-law was in my house last week cooking tamales in my kitchen. They're amazing. It's like, what are you talking about? Please leave me alone. You can't argue me. You can't argue me on point for point. So please just stop talking to me. And I'm kind of tired of that stuff now. And it happens in the military with people who are like, well, your idea sucks. I'm going to do my idea. And it's like, but your idea is going to get us into trouble, or it's going to cause us a delay. It might even get somebody killed, or get them, arrested. Your idea is the wrong way. And it's like, well, shut up. Your rank is so-and-so. And that's how that looks in the military. It's like, well, they just always point back to the rank. And I've always been around, and I've always been in a career field where rank is immaterial. Your experience is supposed to be what matters. Thankfully, I've been able to win those battles more often than not. But occasionally, you have to just in the military, you have to just shut up and chew crayon sometimes. And that can be dangerous. We had a lieutenant one time. And everybody who knows lieutenants knows lieutenants. They're not all bad, but this one was. We're driving down the road. We drove past this pothole. It's been there for months. We always seen it. It has rebar in it sticking up. And we're like, the lead truck is like, well, that might be an IED, but he's like, nah, that's the same one as before. It didn't look like it was buried, like it had been covered up. So we drove past. We are 2 kilometers past this point in time. We are past the city where all this shit goes down. Lieutenant comes on the radio. What are you talking about? An IED? I'm like, well, we got to go back. We got to go back and protect it. And we're like, no, we don't. We are past that point in time. We need to move on and go do what we got to do. We got to be at a certain point in time because we got to come back here. And no, we had to shut up and eat our crayons because he literally pulled rank on us. And he was like, no, we're going to go back there. We're going to secure it until the Iraqis come. We sat there on that watching an empty hole where nothing happened for 2 hours. I filmed a sheep getting slaughtered. I had 2 sheep. 2 sheep got slaughtered in front of me. I was like, oh, well, at least I get to see this happen. And then when the Iraqis showed up, they showed up with their AKs and they shot a whole magazine into this empty hole. They're like, there's no bomb. We're good. We're like, yeah. Well, if there was a bomb, we'd all be dead now. That's cool.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, and that was the Iraqi EOD team. That's what they did. And it was like their solution was to just shoot rounds into a potentially live bomb. And we're like, that's not a cool idea, dude. But we had it out with that lieutenant afterwards. We're like, hey, because your decision, because you failed to think critically, because you wanted to insult, I mean, you pulled rank on us. You caused us to miss our time hack where we had to be at another base at a certain time. Now we got to drive back at night before route clearance is on the road, which means before the roads are cleared of IEDs, we're going to be in front of route clearance by the time we drive back. And he was like, well, that just means we'll stop. We're like, we'll just put on nods and we're like, what? We're not going to see the damn bomb go off. That's what I'm trying to tell you. We don't have to wait for route clearance to get in front of us. And he's like, no, we're just going to go. Like, you utter moron. So we left. Thankfully, we got back. No incident. But that's another case of where a person who fails to win an argument on merit will just insult you and they want to prove their point so bad they're willing to risk everything else. And that's conspiracy theorists who discount all logic and common sense, who disproves of their theories. That's the SJWs who refuse to acknowledge improvements in history. I'm not going to lie and say that things were bad 20, 30, 40, whatever, so many years ago you want to call it, 200 something years ago, but we're a lot better than what we used to be as a culture, as an American culture. Take your shit overseas and you want to see oppression, you want to see oppression, you want to see somebody being discriminated against, take your shit overseas and you'll see it live and in person. Bring it back here and you won't see it happen except in certain communities. But then this is the United States. You can move around a lot more than you can some other places. I don't know if they know that. Yeah. It's kind of like the internet. You can turn the damn thing off. You can turn off your computer screen.
Right.
So yeah, so just thinking about conspiracy theories, you had me thinking there's a podcast. They don't do it anymore. But it's still on iTunes or the podcast side. It's called The Critical Thinker. And he did a 3-part episode. It's called Critical Thinking About Conspiracies. And this was conspiracies, mind control, and falsibility. Mm-hmm. Great series of podcasts about conspiracy theories and why they believe what they believe and how no matter what you do, you're not going to get them to change unless you beat them, unless you prove that, unless you show them, hey, your conspiracy fell apart. When are you going to stop doing that stuff? Right. And then a lot of times when it's happening is they deflect. They're like, well, my vigilance kept the martial law from happening. No, it didn't. It just wasn't there.
Right. So, well, and this is, this is why we think critically. And, we're coming up on 2 hours and I have enjoyed every minute of it, though. I got to tell you, this has been it's really such a an honor for me to be able to talk to you guys and hear your stories, because this is the kind of stuff that I don't get to hear. People like me don't get to hear unless, you know, you guys take the time to educate all of us on it. And also it's just fun. And some of it's heavy, and some of it's serious. And this is real life too. And this is why it's important that we talk about these things, because it's not always going to be light.
Well, like I said before, I was sparked to engage with you on this because of the way your reaction was about running into the homeless veterans, and I'm going to back up on that a little bit, and that goes back to statistics. You don't know who's homeless out there and who. You don't know if they're homeless. You don't know if they're veteran. But the fact that you just assumed that they were homeless and veterans is, and you were driven to rant about it, and you were wondering, why are we giving so much credence to people who are the Justice League? We're giving so much to them, but yet we can't take care of people like this. And you're right. There is that out there. There's that huge aspect to that, and the fact that you, as a random civilian, were drawn to create a rant about it. It inspired me to want to write a blog, and I'm gonna get to that eventually. I was all scatterbrained, but I'm glad you brought attention to it, and I hope that you continue to. But please know, there's help out there for all of us. We can get a hold of it. But I showed you those videos. You talked about charities who people want to accept your money, and work with you on that. And they're out there. They're going to work with you on that. Now, I don't know if someone's got to, if they got any restrictions on what they want to do with your money or work with you, but put the word out there. You're willing to talk to people. I mentioned Article 15 clothing. If you checked out his YouTube videos, they're hilarious. Trust me, he's famous for the bikini snap. It's a great little gimmick they do on their show, on their videos. Ranger Up is awesome company as well. But that 5-finger death punch video, Wrong Side of Heaven, at the end of that video is just a list of charities that people can go if you want to engage, go talk to those people, because they're helping us, but they're helping veterans who need that help. And that's how I think you can really have an impact, is getting the word out there, and then finding your niche in that whole role. And then eventually the money's going to trickle down to somebody who can get that help, or who needs that help, or that companionship. It may not necessarily be money. It may just be a simple, hey, do you want to chat online with somebody about your issues? Come online and do that kind of stuff. Be creative about it. And I'm glad you felt inspired to do it, because it let me know, as a veteran, still serving, but veteran all the same, that there are civilians out there who see these issues and they give a shit enough to actually want to do something. So I hope that continues. I really do hope that you spark some people to kind of move forward with assisting people who truly do need it.
No, thanks. I mean, the thing for me is, like, look, as a porn actress, you inadvertently get attention because as a porn actress, just what happens. And I figure, well, what good is that unless something useful can come of it? And it's amazing how many people on Twitter who followed me are veterans. It's amazing. Like, part of my speaking out on it was, I see these homeless vets. Maybe they're vets, maybe they're not. Panhandlers. You don't know. But
that's fine.
But, just like the idea of it led me to rap with people on Twitter about it. Mm-hmm. And then realizing how many people have these personal experiences. And even if there is help, I have to think, some of these suicide statistics I'm seeing, like, there's got to be a way to do better. Maybe it's just, like you said, maybe civilians just talking about it just drives home the point. Like, yeah, you know what? I may not know you. I may be some random porn actress in Porn Valley, USA, but, like, I do give a fuck. I don't want you guys to kill yourselves. I don't want to live in a world where that is okay, to just ignore that while I have to listen to bullshit SJWs whine about mean tweets. Like, I want to live in a world where people are honored for their contributions and know that there's help. I really think everybody's got something to contribute to the world. I don't know what it is in everyone, but I think that it's there. And if I can make my own little difference in my own little way, I'm going to do it. And I think, everybody else should too. And your blog will be impactful and useful and helpful. And your stories are cool and they're meaningful. Before my dad had died, I wish he had written down more of his stories. He had some really great ones from his time in the service.
I tell everybody, I say, if you've cherished your time in, if you haven't cherished your time in, then ignore this. But if you've cherished your time in service, everyone has a story that can be helpful to tell the military story. It's not always glamorous. We're not all shooters. We're not all spec ops. I know I'm not. I've worked around the dudes, but and I'm grateful for that opportunity. But you know, I'll never be the one to write a story about myself. Um, I'm working. I'm going to try to work on a book to tell the story about others. Um, the ones who can't tell stories anymore because they've been killed in action.
Hmm.
Um, to tell the story of a young 19-year-old black kid who grew up in Greenville, North Carolina. Just tell the story of a young Filipino immigrant who became a citizen when her mother migrated here from the Philippines, who was killed on Christmas Eve. To tell the story of another woman who was the only, or who was one of the first to be killed in my career field, um, on a mission that really didn't need to take place, but that's another story.
Hmm.
Um, to tell the story of people who don't get to say it. My career field is unique. I'll say that much. Um, but these people, they're not here to tell their stories. And the reason why I pointed out those individuals is because they tell the lie, or they speak truth to the lie of the Justice League folks.
Mm-hmm.
These are real people. I'm talking about a black kid from North Carolina, a Filipino immigrant woman, a woman from New York, you know, and I'm bringing up the diverse crowd because it just strikes their hearts. It's like, oh, that doesn't exist. Oh, it does exist, along with the white guys, people like me, along with people like my friend who's at the handle at Last Brother Home, along with his brother. This real pain when that happens when someone dies. It's harmful. You know, it's there and it's real, and it affects us no matter the color or no matter the genitalia of the individual, and the Justice League and the uber sensitive of us will never really get that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad you did, and I'm glad you're doing something that you feel like you can. I'm glad you feel that you can find a role, and you certainly can. Um, don't get distracted and don't get discouraged by if you have difficulty in finding a way forward, because eventually you will, and eventually you'll find something you can do or something you feel is appropriate. Um, just all I ask is that whenever you do make a video, make two. Make sure one's safe for work so it can be shared on networks downrange. Um, I've got friends in Iraq right now who would love to see who when they get out, they'll be glad to know there are people like you who do give a shit, and that's the important part about what civilians can really do to help veterans is a give a shit, nowhere to go to give help, nowhere to go when they're or nowhere how to help, um, and just know how to be a good friend. If that's what it is, if you've known someone who's in and you weren't, just be a friend of the person. You don't have to ask us about how many people we've killed and all this and that. Not important. Probably didn't even happen. But just be the friend. Talk to the individual. Ask them what they need, if anything. And if not, hey, guess what? Maybe they don't need anything. But continue being there for them, because eventually they're gonna come asking for help about something, and it may not be something as serious as suicide, may not be something as serious about needing a job. Maybe it's something about just having to haul stuff out of a garage, moving back home, trying to settle down, that kind of stuff. Um, Veterans service members, when they go away, they leave home. I've been trying for 13 years to get back to my home, and it's impossible.
Hmm.
Just the job that I picked just doesn't exist where I want to live, which is next to my parents. Um, I live in a great town. Would love to live there. I would do anything I can to live back home, but um, that just isn't possible with my responsibilities as a family man.
Yeah.
For some people, hey, they can live the free, loving, single life when they get out, but they're still going to need a friend, and they cut off from the military, and eventually they they kind of want to come back to that. They kind of want that brotherhood, and that's where places like VFW come into play. But that's where you as a civilian and others can kind of, hey, maybe you should go talk to WFW. Maybe you should go talk to some other veterans, and can I take you there? Can I hear some of your stories? Um, a lot of them might be bullshit, but you know what? They'll be fun bullshit, and it'll be fun to listen to. And so that's all I really got to say. We've talked for almost 2 hours now. Holy crap! So.
Well, I've enjoyed every minute of it. So where can people find your blog, and where can they find you on Twitter and all that?
I mostly blog about cooking recipes.
Cool.
And cross stitching. No, I'm kidding. I do cross stitch though. I will freely admit I am a straight male who cross stitches. Cool. Actually, it's kind of how I proposed to my wife. Yeah, I made Eeyore. So where I blog at is actually it's on Medium. I don't really blog so much about non-military issues, but I'm going to try to write this one up. It's a military issue, but it's one that's unique in how I want to approach it. But it's medium.com/point-of-decision is the blog there. Me and some others, we kind of write about various issues, and we try to put some humor or we try to throw some critical thinking into some of the standard ways of thinking that are standard, the popular line of thinking that's out there. But I'm not the only blogger on that side. I'm just one of the other authors. I've written a few things out there. But I'm on Twitter at Kudzu. That's KUDZU81. Yes, I am a Georgian, and yes, kudzu is the vine that eats everything. People always ask me, what is kudzu? And I go, you are not from the South, are you?
Well, I didn't know what it was. I was going to ask you.
It's actually a Japanese, I believe it came from Japan. It's like some kind of Japanese vine. It consumes everything. Look up kudzu. Look at it eating houses and roads and trees and everything else. It's ridiculous. You can't kill it. It's just it is probably the zombie apocalypse of plants.
Oh shit. So all right, so everyone can find you on Kudzu81, and you said it's medium.com/point-of-decision.
I can probably pull it up. I've only put out 2 blogs so far, but
send it to me and I'll put it in the link of the chat. And it's just been a pleasure. Thank you so much. So appreciate you taking the time to come on.
That's that right here. Yeah, my last blog was about American Odyssey on NBC. I hate that show so much. I've got my reasons for hating it. It's on there, but yeah, no, I'm glad you had me. Anytime, day or night. Well, almost day or night. But I look forward to doing this again and sharing whatever I can. And yeah, please, if you can, talk to my friend Last Brother Home. He's a great guy to have on and talk about his issues themselves and some of the other issues he's tackled, because his story is unique. And for those who are still listening, the story is about. And Mercedes put a short blurb about 6 hours ago now, I guess. He is at Last Brother Home, and his book is about his story of being in Iraq, and I was with him at the time, of learning that his brother was killed in action in northern Iraq, and being the one who escorts the body home. And eventually he came back to Iraq. Everybody would have understood that he didn't have to, but he did, and that's the positive note that I want to put on there. He could have stayed home. He could definitely stayed home, and everybody would have understood. But he came back, and he did damn fine work when he came back too. So he's a stellar dude all around. I love him, and I hope you can get him on here so he can tell everybody else his story.
I would, and I've invited him, and I think he said when things calm down, he would like to be on. I would love to have him on and have him talk, and maybe you guys can come on together. So
sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for listening. You guys can always find me on Twitter at @TheMercedesXXX. It's not safe for work. If you want safer work, then you hit me up on Facebook / Mercedes Carrera X. And I love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Kudzu, thank you so much for being here with me, and we'll talk to you soon.